So with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse coming out in another week, I thought I have to go back and talk about the first five Spider-Man films. I have talked about Spider-Man Homecoming on this channel, and I also talked about Venom as well, but I have not talked about the original Spider-Man films, the original Sam Raimi trilogy, and then the Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2. And this is a franchise I love. I love both of these iterations of Spider-Man, and the Tom Holland one as well. But I think all three of these Spider-Man films, or film, like, iterations, I do love for the most part. So I wanted to go in and talk about these films before the new one comes out, because I really do love Spider-Man as a character. I've read a couple Spider-Man comics and really enjoy them. I'm not a big comic book person, but I've read a couple of his, and I really do enjoy Spider-Man as a character. I think he is my favorite superhero because he is such a down-to-earth character where he's not a millionaire, he's not a god, he's not any of these Marvel characters that are kind of unrelatable in a way, because this character struggling with everything in life, I think it's way more interesting than like the other characters, even though I think the other characters are awesome in Marvel. But like, Spider-Man is my favorite superhero. I think that he rings true to like a true hero, a person who struggles with villains and like superpowered villains and real life villains, and like real life struggles and real life heartbreaks and real life adventures and fun. And I like that this character does so many things with real life and his superhero life. So I love Spider-Man as a character. Always have, like, ever since I watched this first movie, is the start of this. So let's just get started with Spider-Man 2002. Sam Raimi, horror director, doing Spider-Man, the first Spider-Man in 2002, the first of the trilogy. And before I talk about this movie, actually, I want to mention, since Sam Raimi directed this, I thought it was hilarious that this one is it has a lot of similarities to Darkman, a movie that Sam Raimi directed, which also has Danny Elfman as the music composer. I thought that that's just a funny little tidbit, that like this and Darkman are very similar. Like, they both have the musical cues, they both have the visual shots, and I feel like they do a lot of things very similarly. So I thought that that was a funny little thing to note on before I talk about the actual movie. That this is like Darkman, but it's the same movie directed by Sam Raimi. Like, Sam Raimi directed it as well, and it also has Danny Elfman doing the score. So there are bound to be similarities between this first Spider-Man movie and Darkman. So I just thought that was a funny thing to bring up before I talk about the actual movie. Now, the movie itself, I love that this and the first X-Men movie from 2000, these were both the movies that started the comic book boom. Like, it was never even close to the oversaturation of superhero movies we have now. Like, we only got like a couple a year, maybe like one a year sometimes in the 2000s, because that wasn't a big thing. It wasn't trying to be what it is now. Like, if you look at the year 2000 or 2002 compared to 2018 and the past couple years before that, it is just insane with how many superhero movies we have. And we get a majority of great products with these superhero movies, but I love how whenever this movie came out, there wasn't much competition. We had the X-Men movies, which were great as well, but they were different than this. Like, they weren't the same type of superhero movie. And I love that this is one of the starting superhero movies. Like, literally, this one and X-Men started this craze, and they really are first great movies of those franchises. And I really love that this movie is still held up. Like, it is dated in a little bit. Like, it is a tad dated. It definitely is, this one, but I don't care if it's dated. I love this movie, and honestly, rewatching the first Spider-Man again, and I've seen it hundreds of times, but watching it again this time, something clicked with me to where I love this one even more. Like, this, I think this is an incredible superhero movie, And I've always liked it. I've always thought it was a good superhero movie. I always thought Spider-Man 2 was the better one of Sam Raimi's. And it still is, I think. And I will watch that next. But this one in particular, you got to commend Sam Raimi for starting with this movie and not having... Like, I mean, he did Darkman. But, like, starting with this big, gigantic film with such a scope and incredible, like, everything about it I think is incredible. I love how the cast is superb. Like, everybody is great in this movie. I like how with all of these characters, the writing in this is so good. I love how all these characters you care for, every one of them. It's not just Peter Parker. And Peter Parker is the main character, but everybody else is just as important. Everybody shapes his life. Everybody is there to serve their purpose, but they're more than that. They're important as Peter Parker is. I love that. I love how you instantly get to feel for Peter Parker, this character who is true to the comics, where he is just this nerdy kid who wants the girl. He wants Mary Jane, but she's dating Flash, and he's just this nerd that everybody makes fun of and like bullies them. And I love that fact, and I love the fact that his friend Harry Osborn, in this version, is kind of pushed away by his father Norman because he is not. Norman eventually starts to love Peter Parker kind of as a son because Peter Parker is like him, where he likes the same type of thing. I'm not saying that Harry Osborn isn't smart, but like Peter and Norman have this connection that Norman and his son Harry don't even have. So I love how you feel so much for Harry too, and feel so sympathetic for him because Harry, not having a father who cares. I mean, he does love him, I guess, but like he doesn't care for him the same way he does for his friend. And I love how they write this out to where both of these characters you feel so much sympathy for because they both are outcast. Harry's this rich kid who doesn't want to be this rich kid, and his father outs him. Like, he lives with his father, but he outs him. He doesn't care about him. So it makes Harry jealous. And I really love how it just works that way, where like he can't please his father, but his best friend can. Like, I think that's such great writing and such great, and in terms of the performances as well, it's just incredible. Tobey Maguire and James Franco. And James Franco is awesome in this movie as well. And really, you feel so much sympathy for these two characters. I love that you can do that with these two characters. You feel so much for them. And you also feel, not as much, but you feel bad for Mary Jane, who comes from a bad background, a bad family, a drunk for a father, who disrespects her. And I like how she isn't just there. Like, you do understand her struggles too. Her struggle to be an aspiring actress. Her trying to wondering if she should be with Flash or not. Her eventual love for Peter Parker and her eventual love for Harry Osborn, and it becomes a love triangle. And I love that as well. And it feels like it actually works really well with the love triangle thing. Usually in these types of movies, or in any type of movie with a love triangle, I'm like, oh, that's kind of dumb that like all three of them love each other and you don't understand why. In this one, I feel like you really do, because all three of these characters are being thrown away by everybody, and like they keep clinging towards each other. So that love triangle thing, I think, works really well in this movie. And I like how this is a trope that started in this movie, or maybe, I don't know if this is the first one, but this happens in so many other superhero movies after this, but it's done very well in this movie, where the hero and the villain mirror themselves. Peter gains his abilities, Norman gains his abilities right whenever it happens, right whenever they both happen the same day. Norman goes insane, Peter gets bitten by a spider. They both gain abilities. And I like how you don't get as much with Norman because he's the villain. You're rooting for the hero, so you get more with Peter. But I like how you really do, again, they do a fantastic job with balance in this movie, with balancing both of these characters, with Peter as the hero and Norman as the villain. Peter is balanced in a way where you get to see all of his training, you get to see him learn and become Spider-Man, and learning from his mistakes, like when Uncle Ben is killed after he goes to do wrestling to impress Mary Jane with a car. And then he lets the guy go who robs the guy who was going to give Peter the money, but he didn't. So Uncle Ben is killed because of Peter. And I love how this character, you feel, again, even though he unintentionally killed his uncle, you feel so much sympathy for him and understand that this is not what he was trying to do at all. And like, because of this sacrifice of his uncle, Peter becomes a better hero and a better person, and it's great that they do that. I love that sacrifice angle where like he betters himself because he lost his uncle, and I love that, and I love Peter and Uncle Ben's connection. I love their conversation before he dies. I love that. I love Cliff Robertson's great as Uncle Ben, and I love how they have that conversation, right? That final conversation before Peter goes into the library, but then he goes to the wrestling match, where he says to Peter, like, these are the years where a man changes into the person that he's going to become for the rest of his life, and be careful who you change into. And I love that he says that with great power comes great responsibility. But I love how Peter denies Uncle Ben and says, like, something's changed. I don't know. Like, quit trying to be my father. And that causes Uncle Ben to be sad about it whenever Peter leaves to go to the library. And I love that this is so tragic because that's their last conversation. And then whenever Peter realizes that Uncle Ben is dying later and he goes and he dies and like right next to him, like, it builds on Peter's character. It makes him stronger. It makes him, I mean, it breaks him down, but it makes him stronger and a better character. And I love how they work that into this movie. I think that's great. That last conversation that they'll ever have. Like, I love that. Or the last real conversation. I also appreciate that the movie takes place in the span of, like, I'm assuming a year. It never fully says because Peter's in high school, he graduates, he's in college. But, like, I love that all these characters evolve in this movie. We see Peter, Mary Jane, Harry, and Norman all change throughout this movie. They all, by the end of the movie, you feel like they've gone the real distance in terms of, like, how they've evolved from the beginning of the movie to the end of the movie. So I really loved all these characters and how they change and how they all grow. Like, Peter grows from his uncle's death. He grows from deciding on really truly loving Mary Jane and Norman and realizing what Norman is, and Norman with his son, and Norman with Peter realizing he's Spider-Man. Like, all these characters evolve in such a fantastic way. And all the other characters are great as well. Like, Aunt May is great too. Rosemary Harris is really good, and she's really, like you feel so much sympathy for her. Like, she's got a great performance in this movie, and all three of them, honestly. And I really cannot not mention this, like, if I did this review and did not mention the people at the Daily Bugle, I feel like that would be an insult, because the characters of the Daily Bugle are awesome. J.K. Simmons as J. Jonah Jameson. Everybody says it's one of the coolest, like, performances he's ever had, J.K. Simmons, and it truly is. J.K. Simmons in this movie is really, really hilarious, a real dirtbag. I love this performance. It is a incredibly great character performance, and it is incredibly memorable in all three of these Spider-Man movies, the Sam Raimi ones. And I love Elizabeth Banks too. I love that she's in this as well. I think that she was good as Betty Brant. Like, she's really funny. She's got, like, this, I don't know how to explain it, like this, like, the way she talks to these characters I think is fun and funny, and she's just got great comedic banter as well. So I really love those side characters, and all the side characters are great in this movie as well. And I can't go without mentioning the action as well. The action in this movie is really cool. For its first iteration of any of these Spider-Man movies, yeah, you could tell it's dated now because the action in this is good. It's just, you could tell some of the CG is fake. But I mean, it is in all the movies, but you feel like it's the fakest in this one. But I think that the action in this is really good, and how they incorporate Spider-Man and the Green Goblin, I think, are actually really incredible. The way Spider-Man moves is just a cool style that works very well in translation to live action. It really fits. Like, reading a comic book with Spider-Man in it and then watching this movie and then watching all the other movies, you could see how they really made it to where this feels like a comic book brought to life, with how the character moves, with how he responds to things, with the action, with the character in the suit. Like, it's really, the action is incredibly well done with how he moves and how he works. And the Green Goblin on a glider is a cool, great first Spider-Man villain to be a worthy adversary. I like that as well. And the fight at the parade is really good, and the fight on the bridge is really thrilling and really, really great whenever Peter, the Goblin, figures out that Mary Jane loves Peter, and he realizes Peter's Spider-Man, so he gives Peter the ultimatum of, like, save Mary Jane or save the kids, and choose, and then he drops both the kids in this tram and Mary Jane, dropping them both at once, and Peter has to save them both. And because you care so much about this character, and it makes the action even more epic and more incredible in the bridge scene. And it really is a great choice between Mary Jane and the children, and Peter just chooses both. He saves them both, and I love that as well. And then we get the final fight with Peter and the Goblin in the abandoned building, which is really great, really cool. It's a dark location, and it really works with Peter having most of his suit, like, gone off of his face, like most of his mask is gone, like and then a grenade that the Goblin has blows up in front of him, so Peter is broken to hell. And I love the fact that this guy takes such a beating in this movie, and with that final fight with the Goblin, like, he outsmarts him, and he wins because he just realizes with this sense that, like, the Goblin's gonna kill him with the glider, but then the glider impales Norman, and he tells Peter right before he dies, "Don't tell Harry," and then he dies. And this is a perfect way to establish what the second movie is gonna be, where Norman is dead, Spider-Man comes in, drops Norman's body off to Harry, and Harry is like, "What have you done?" And then Harry gets a gun, but then Spider-Man's gone. And then we have the grave, the scene at the graveyard where Norman's burial, where, like, all three of them, like Peter, Mary Jane, and Harry are there, and Harry says to Peter, like, "Spider-Man will pay, like, I swear on my life, he will pay." And he said, "But at least I've got you, Pete." And I just love that irony of, like, Harry doesn't know that he's Spider-Man, but he's saying that right to his face, like, "At least I have you, even though my father's gone." And I love the fact that that final line between Peter and Mary Jane, where, like, they finally pronounce their love for each other, is incredible, because it builds throughout the whole movie, like, they both do truly care and love about each other. And I love how you think that this is going to end happily. And he said at the beginning of the movie, like, "This is not a happy story." And whenever she says, "I love you," and then he says, "I don't," it's just heartbreaking. And it actually works incredibly well, because it built up to this supposed to be happy ending, and then it's not. It ends with Peter saying, like, "I can't. I will always be there to protect you." And the reason he did that is because Spider-Man has enemies, like, or will have enemies. Like, if she gets trapped again, like, she could be killed next time, like she almost did at the bridge. So that is great, and I love how they have that final kiss, and then he walks away, and she's just sitting there touching her lips, and just goes, and just looks around, and then, like, she knows, like, he could be Spider-Man. Like, she immediately, because they have the kiss earlier in the rain. It's so incredibly well done. That ending scene is incredible. And I love that it's got the monologue where, like, Peter's just saying to the audience, like, "This is my gift, my curse." And, like, it shows him, like, being Spider-Man just flying around the city. And that's how the movie ends. But I love how it doesn't end in a happy way. It literally ends in a way where Peter just like he loses everything. Like he kills Norman and is under the pressure of Harry realizing it and Mary Jane realizing that he's Spider-Man as well, and he can't love her because of his abilities. Like he's afraid she'll die. So I love that ending. That ending is incredible. I love how ironic and incredible that last ending scene was. And I also love how this movie has such an elegance and epicness to it at the same time. Like, all the romantic moments are really sweet, all the action moments are really epic and have big scope, and these characters are so interesting. You care so much for them. You feel so much sympathy for all of them that I love that you care about every single character. Usually movies don't do that much. Like, superhero movies don't do that much where you care about every single character, but this one does it incredibly well. And I love how there's so many iconic images in this movie that either were taken from comics or become famous in pop culture. Like, for example, they're usually the romantic scenes, which is funny enough, but the moment where, like, Peter and Mary Jane have the kiss, where, like, he's upside down and he's kissing her from being upside down and she's on the ground. Or them riding, like, him taking her away after the parade, where, like, he's flying with her up in the air and she's just holding him and looking out while, like, they're flying at a distance on the web. Like, that's just an incredible shot. And then just him riding in the sky and how Spider-Man moves and how he works. It just works incredibly well in this movie. Everything, there's so many visual images that are embedded in pop culture now that they really are incredible. They just really hold up. And the acting is incredible. Like, Tobey Maguire, you feel so much for this character. Even though he's my least favorite Spider-Man out of the three, he is still incredible, and he really, truly is. I think the second movie is where he is at his best, but he is a really fantastic first Spider-Man. Even though he's not my favorite, he is still fantastic. Really love Tobey Maguire in this. James Franco is really great as a sympathetic character, Harry Osborn, who you feel for him and understand everything that he's going through with Peter. Like, he is just like Peter, except for he's rich, except for he's not a geek, but he has a father who resents him. His father dies at the end of the movie, and he swears revenge on Spider-Man, so he's such an interesting character as well. And Mary Jane is such an interesting character, too. She is kind of a damsel, but she is interesting. She has a good backstory, and she is such like, her romantic connection with Peter is really, really good, and really, you feel so much for them. So she is so great. And Willem Dafoe is incredible as Norman Osborn. He has that performance where he's not over the top, but he is a perfect balance between comic book craziness on screen. But he is so great, and I love Willem Dafoe as well in this movie. He is incredible. And creepy as well. So, and all the other actors, like I said, Aunt May, Rosemary Harris is great. J.K. Simmons is incredible as well. Elizabeth Banks is great too. All of these characters, all the performances, all the writing, all the acting is so incredible that this just really blows me away. Like, I think this is an incredible movie. Rewatching it again, like, I've always liked this movie, but this time it clicked with me so much more that I truly loved these characters, and I loved everything that they did, everything that involved them, every step they went through, every tragedy, every funny moment, every emotional moment. Everything worked in this movie for me. I really love all these characters. I love everything about this movie. Rewatching it, I think it's incredible. So, but I think the second one is even better, which is a great bonus. So, anyways, that's all I could say about this film, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. So tell me down below what you guys think of this original Spider-Man film. And I will review Spider-Man 2 next. So thank you guys so much for watching.